The rain was coming down hard that Tuesday night in Detroit. Diane Foster pulled her old jacket tighter around her shoulders as she hurried toward her apartment building. Her feet ached something terrible. 12 hours at the hospital will do that to you, especially when you're on your feet the whole time taking care of patients. She was 42 years old and felt every bit of it tonight. The double shifts were killing her, but what choice did she have? Her 2 daughters needed school supplies. Maya wanted to join the debate team, which cost money, and Keisha needed new shoes. The bills never stopped coming, but Diane never complained out loud. That wasn't her way. As she approached the entrance to her building, something caught her eye. At first, she thought it was just a pile of old clothes someone had dumped under the stairwell, but then the pile moved. Diane stopped in her tracks, her nurse instincts kicking in immediately. She took a few careful steps closer. That's when she saw him. A little boy, couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old, curled up in a tight ball under the concrete stairs. He was soaking wet, shivering so hard his whole body shook. His clothes were torn and dirty, hanging off his small frame like rags. "Hey, sweetie," Diane said softly, keeping her distance so she wouldn't scare him. "You okay under there?" The boy's head snapped up, and Diane's heart broke right there on that wet sidewalk. His eyes were huge with fear, like a cornered animal. Even in the dim light from the street lamp, she could see the bruises. Dark purple marks on his thin arms, a nasty cut above his eyebrow that looked a few days old. His lip was split and swollen. "I'm not going to hurt you, baby," Diane said, crouching down slowly. The rain was pouring over her now, but she didn't care. "My name is Diane. I live right here in this building. Are you hurt?" The boy didn't answer. He just stared at her with those frightened eyes, pressing himself further back against the cold concrete wall. Diane's mind was racing. She'd seen a lot in her years as a nurse. She'd seen accidents, illnesses, all kinds of injuries. But she knew abuse when she saw it. Those bruises weren't from falling off a bike. That split lip wasn't from a playground accident. Someone had hurt this child. Someone had hurt him bad and hurt him more than once. "Honey, you're freezing out here." She tried again, her voice as gentle as she could make it. "How long have you been sitting in this rain?" Still nothing, but his shivering got worse. Diane sat down right there on the wet ground, not caring about her work uniform getting soaked. Sometimes you had to meet people where they were, especially scared kids. She'd learned that raising her own daughters. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," she said, "but I can't leave you out here in the rain. You could get real sick. Pneumonia is no joke, especially for little ones." She waited. The rain kept falling. Car headlights passed by on the street. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. The boy watched her with those careful, cautious eyes. "I got 2 daughters upstairs," Diane continued, keeping her voice calm and steady. "They're teenagers now. Think they know everything. But they're good girls. We got some leftovers from dinner. Spaghetti. You like spaghetti?" Something flickered in the boy's eyes at the mention of food. "When's the last time you ate something, baby?" Diane asked. The boy's thin shoulders moved up and down just a little. A tiny shrug. "Okay," Diane said. "Here's what I'm thinking. You come on up to my apartment just for a little bit. Get out of this rain. I'll make you a plate, get you a warm towel. You don't have to tell me nothing you don't want to. And if you want to leave after you eat, that's okay too. But I can't let you sit out here in the cold and wet. My conscience won't let me sleep tonight if I do that. What do you say?" The boy looked at her for what felt like forever. Diane could see him thinking, weighing his options, trying to decide if she was safe. Lord knows what this child had been through to make him this scared of a grown woman offering help. Finally, so quietly she almost didn't hear it, he whispered, "Okay." Diane felt relief wash over her. "All right then, let's get you inside." She stood up slowly, giving him space. The boy unfolded himself from his hiding spot, and Diane got a better look at him. He was small for his age, way too skinny. His clothes were wrong for the weather. Just a thin t-shirt with holes in it and pants that were too short. No jacket, no shoes, just dirty socks with holes in the toes. They walked to the apartment in silence. Diane kept glancing at him from the corner of her eye. He walked with a limp, favoring his left leg. Another injury, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Who does this to a child? When they got inside her apartment, her daughters were in the living room doing homework. Maya looked up first and her eyes went wide when she saw the boy. "Mama, who's this?" she asked, already moving toward them. "We got a guest tonight," Diane said simply. Baby, go get some towels and maybe some of those old clothes we were gonna donate. Keisha, warm up some of that spaghetti from dinner. Her girls didn't ask questions. They'd been raised right. They just moved into action, and Diane felt proud of them in that moment. She led the boy to the bathroom and handed him a towel. You can clean up in here if you want. Take your time. While he was in there, Diane went to the kitchen where Keisha was heating up food. Mama, is he okay? Keisha whispered. He looks so scared. I know, baby. We're gonna help him, all right? Just be gentle. When the boy came out of the bathroom, his face was cleaner, but the bruises stood out even more now. Maya had laid out some old sweatpants and a t-shirt that would be too big on him, but at least they were dry and warm. They all sat down at the small kitchen table. Diane put a plate of spaghetti in front of him, and the way he looked at that food nearly made her cry. He ate like he hadn't seen a meal in days, which he probably hadn't. Slow down, sweetie, Diane said gently. It's not going anywhere. You'll make yourself sick eating that fast. He did slow down just a little. When he finished the first plate, Diane gave him another. And then another. Her daughters watched quietly, understanding without being told that something serious was happening. After he finally stopped eating, Diane brought him a glass of water. What's your name, honey? The boy looked at the glass in his hands. For a long moment, Diane thought he wouldn't answer. Then so quiet she had to lean in to hear. Tommy. Tommy Jenkins. Tommy, Diane repeated, giving him a warm smile. That's a good, strong name. Tommy, can you tell me where you live? Where your family is? Tommy's whole body went rigid. The fear came flooding back into his eyes. No, he said quickly. Can't go back. Please don't make me go back. Hey! Diane reached out but didn't touch him, not wanting to scare him more. Nobody's making you do anything. You're safe here. He'll find me, Tommy whispered, and tears started rolling down his cheeks. He always finds me, and when he does, it's gonna be worse. It's always worse when I run. Diane felt her heart crack wide open. Who, baby? Who are you running from? My foster dad, Tommy said, and now he was crying for real. Mr. Dale, he gets real mad. He says I'm bad. Says I need to be taught lessons. But I try to be good, miss, I really try. But he still gets mad and He couldn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Diane moved her chair closer. Tommy, look at me. Look right at me, baby. Tommy lifted his tear-streaked face. You are not bad, Diane said firmly. You hear me? Whatever that man told you is a lie. You are a child. You are a good child. And what he's doing to you is wrong. It's not your fault. None of it is your fault. Tommy just stared at her like nobody had ever said those words to him before. Like he wanted to believe her but didn't know how. You can sleep here tonight, Diane continued. On the couch. It's comfortable. My girls will get you some blankets. And tomorrow we're gonna figure this out together. But right now you need rest. When's the last time you slept somewhere safe? Tommy couldn't answer that question. He probably didn't even know. That night, after Tommy fell asleep on the couch wrapped in blankets, Diane sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee she didn't drink. Her daughters had gone to bed. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of the rain still falling outside. She looked at the sleeping boy, so small and broken, and made a decision. She didn't know exactly what she was going to do yet. She didn't know how she was going to make this work with her own money troubles and busy schedule, but she knew one thing for absolute certain. She wasn't going to let this child go back to being hurt. Whatever it took, however long it took, she was going to fight for him. Diane Foster had never been the type to walk away from someone who needed help. And Tommy Jenkins needed help more than anyone she'd ever met. So that's what she would give him. Help, protection, and maybe if she did this right, a chance at something he'd never had before. Hope. Diane woke up that next morning with her neck stiff from sleeping in the chair. She'd wanted to stay close to Tommy, just in case he woke up scared or tried to run. The early morning light was coming through the window, and she could see him still asleep on the couch, finally looking peaceful. She made coffee as quietly as she could and sat back down at the kitchen table. Her mind had been working all night, even in her sleep. She knew she had to report what was happening to Tommy. That was the law, and more than that, it was the right thing to do. But she'd seen how the system worked. She'd seen kids slip through the cracks, get sent back to bad situations, or bounce around from place to place until they gave up hoping things would get better. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for. Patricia Wilson. They'd gone to nursing school together 20 years ago, and now Patricia worked for Child Protective Services. If anyone would listen and actually care, it would be her. "Girl, do you know what time it is?" Patricia answered, her voice thick with sleep. "I need your help," Diane said simply. "Got a situation here and I need to know how to do this right." She told Patricia everything. About finding Tommy, the bruises, his fear, what he'd said about his foster father. Patricia listened without interrupting, and Diane could hear her friend's breathing change as she got more awake and more concerned. "Okay," Patricia finally said. "First thing, don't call the regular hotline. Those calls can take days to get processed, and in the meantime, this boy could get pulled back into that home. Give me an hour. I'm going to make some calls, get the right people involved. You just keep him safe until I can get there." True to her word, Patricia showed up an hour later with a CPS investigator named Mr. Brennan. He was a white man in his 50s, carrying a worn briefcase and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Diane didn't like him immediately, but she kept her face neutral. Tommy had woken up by then, and when he saw the strangers, he moved closer to Diane. She put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Tommy, this is my friend Patricia. She's here to help. And this is Mr. Brennan. They need to ask you some questions about what's been happening to you. Is that okay?" Tommy looked up at her with those big, scared eyes. "You gonna stay?" "Every single second," Diane promised. "I'm not going anywhere." The interview was hard to watch. Tommy struggled to put words to what had been done to him. Mr. Brennan asked his questions in a flat, bored tone that made Diane's blood pressure rise. He seemed more interested in filling out his forms than in the terrified child sitting in front of him. "And you're sure about these incidents?" Mr. Brennan asked, like Tommy might be making it up. "Kids sometimes exaggerate when they're angry with their parents." "He's not his parent," Diane cut in sharply. "He's a foster parent who's been beating this child." Mr. Brennan looked at her over his glasses. "Ma'am, I need to hear it from the child." Tommy nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "It's true. All of it." After they left, taking Tommy with them for a medical examination and temporary placement, Diane felt sick to her stomach. Patricia stayed behind for a moment. "I know that look," Patricia said. "You're worried." "That man doesn't believe him," Diane said. "I could see it in his face. He thinks Tommy's just another troubled kid making up stories." "Brennan's burned out," Patricia admitted. "Seen too many cases, stopped seeing the kids. But I'm on this now. I'll make sure it gets handled right." But handling it right turned out to be harder than either of them expected. The next few days, Diane couldn't stop thinking about Tommy. She called Patricia every day for updates. The medical exam had documented all the injuries, old and new. That was good. But Tommy's foster father, this man, Dale Hutchins, had hired a lawyer. He was denying everything, saying Tommy was a problem child who hurt himself for attention. Diane felt rage building up inside her like nothing she'd felt before. She'd raised 2 daughters by herself after their father left. She'd worked double shifts for years. She'd gone without so her kids could have what they needed. But she'd never felt as angry as she did thinking about that man hurting Tommy, and then lying about it. She decided she needed to see Tommy. She called Patricia and asked which group home he'd been placed in. It took some convincing, but Patricia finally gave her the address. The group home was across town, a big old house that had seen better days. The woman who answered the door looked tired but kind. Her name was Mrs. Chen, and she managed the home. "You here for Tommy?" she asked. "He mentioned a Miss Diane. Talks about you a lot." Diane's heart squeezed. "Can I see him?" Tommy was in the common room with 5 other kids watching television. When he saw Diane, his whole face lit up. He ran to her and she hugged him tight. "You came back," he said into her shoulder. "Of course I came back," Diane said. "I told you I would help you, didn't I?" They sat together on an old couch and Tommy told her about his days at the group home. It wasn't bad, he said, but it wasn't home either. The other kids were okay, but everyone was sad or angry about something. The counselors tried their best, but there were too many kids and not enough of them. "What's going to happen to me?" Tommy asked. "Nobody tells me anything." Diane took a deep breath. "There's an investigation happening. They're looking into what Mr. Dale did to you. It takes time, baby, but we're going to make sure you never have to go back there. Promise?" Tommy looked at her with those eyes that had seen too much. Diane had never been one to make promises she couldn't keep. But looking at this child, she heard herself say, "I promise. Whatever it takes," and she meant it. Over the next several weeks, Diane became Tommy's shadow. She attended every meeting with CPS, even when Mr. Brennan suggested her presence wasn't necessary. She documented everything in a notebook. Dates, times, who said what. She called lawyers trying to find one who would take Tommy's case pro bono. Most said no. One finally said yes after Diane wore her down with daily phone calls. The lawyer's name was Ms. Rodriguez, and she was young, but fierce. She looked at Tommy's medical records and photographs of his injuries, and Diane saw the same anger in her eyes that she felt in her own chest. "This is clear-cut abuse," Ms. Rodriguez said at their first meeting. "The problem is getting the system to move fast enough." The investigation dragged on. Every week felt like a month. Diane visited Tommy 3 times a week, bringing him books from the library, new sketch pads when she noticed he liked to draw, and most importantly, consistency. She showed up when she said she would, every single time. Her own life started falling apart around the edges. She had to call in sick to work twice to make court appearances. Her supervisor pulled her aside with a warning about her attendance. Her bank account was getting dangerously low from the gas money driving across town, and the little things she bought for Tommy. Maya and Keisha noticed their mother's stress. One night they sat her down at the kitchen table. "Mama, we want to help," Maya said. "I can pick up more babysitting jobs." "Keisha can too." "Girls, no," Diane started, but Keisha interrupted. "Mama, you taught us to help people who need it. That little boy needs it. We're a family. We do this together." Diane felt tears sting her eyes. Her daughters were good kids. Really good kids. The breakthrough finally came 3 months after that rainy night. Ms. Rodriguez had been digging, and she found 2 other former foster children who'd been placed with Dale Hutchins. Both had similar stories of abuse. With their testimonies added to Tommy's case and the medical evidence, the prosecutor finally had enough. Dale Hutchins was arrested on a Thursday morning. Diane got the call from Patricia while she was at work. "It's done," Patricia said. "He's in custody. Bail hearing tomorrow, but even if he makes bail, Tommy won't be going back there. Ever." Diane had to sit down. She felt like all the air had left her lungs. 3 months of fighting, of being told she was too involved, of people looking at her like she was overreacting. 3 months of watching Tommy try to be brave while being scared. And now finally justice. She went straight to the group home after her shift ended. Mrs. Chen let her in with a knowing smile. "He's in the backyard," she said, drawing like always. Diane found Tommy sitting under a tree with his sketch pad. He was concentrating hard on whatever he was drawing, his tongue poking out the corner of his mouth the way kids do when they're focused. "Hey, baby," she said softly so she wouldn't startle him. Tommy looked up and smiled. That smile was becoming more common now, less rare. "Miss D, look what I drew." It was a picture of a woman with kind eyes. "That's you," he said. "I wanted to remember what you look like in case..." In case nothing, Diane sat down next to him in the grass. "I got some news. Mr. Dale got arrested today." "You're not going back there. You're safe now," Tommy stared at her. "Really? Like really, really?" "Really, really," Diane confirmed. And then Tommy did something that made everything worth it. He dropped his sketch pad and threw his arms around Diane's neck and cried. Not scared crying. Relief crying. The kind of crying that comes when you finally let go of something heavy you've been carrying too long. Diane held him and let him cry it out. She cried too, for this boy who'd been hurt so badly, for the fight it took to protect him, for the system that made it so hard to do the right thing. But mostly she cried because she knew this was just the beginning. Tommy was safe from Dale Hutchins now. But he still needed a place to belong, people to love him, a chance to heal, and Diane had already made up her mind about something. She was going to be there for all of it, however long it took. The years that followed weren't easy, but they were filled with something Tommy had never really known before. Consistency. Diane kept her promise. Every single week, like clockwork, she showed up at the group home to see him. At first, Tommy didn't trust it. He'd wait by the window on visiting days, watching for her car, half expecting her not to come. But she always did. Rain or shine, whether she felt good or terrible, whether she had money or was scraping by, Diane Foster showed up for Tommy Jenkins. The system wouldn't let her officially foster him. Her apartment was too small, they said. She worked too many hours. She didn't have enough money saved up. It felt like they had 1,000 reasons why she couldn't take him home, even though she'd been the one who saved him in the first place. But Diane wasn't one to give up easy. If she couldn't be his foster mother, she'd be something else. She signed up for a mentoring program through the group home, became his official big sister through the paperwork, though everyone knew she was so much more than that. It gave her rights to take him on outings, attend his school meetings, be listed as an emergency contact. It wasn't everything she wanted, but it was something. Tommy was 9 years old when they started this new chapter together. He'd been through so much already that he had walls built up around his heart higher than any kid should have. He'd get angry over small things, throw things, refuse to talk for days. The counselors at the group home said it was normal for kids with his history. Trauma, they called it. Said it would take time to heal. Diane had time. She had patience too, even when it was hard. There was this one incident when Tommy was 10. Diane had saved up to take him to a basketball game, something special he'd been excited about for weeks. But the morning of the game, one of the other kids at the group home accidentally broke Tommy's favorite pencil. It was just a pencil, nothing expensive, but Tommy lost it completely. Threw chairs, screamed things that broke Diane's heart, locked himself in his room and wouldn't come out. Mrs. Chen called Diane apologizing, saying maybe they should reschedule the game. "I'm coming over," Diane said simply. She sat outside Tommy's locked door for 2 hours. Didn't bang on it, didn't yell, didn't threaten. Just sat there and talked to him through the door. "I know you're hurting, baby," she said quietly. "I know you're angry. You got every right to be angry after what you've been through. But I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna sit right here until you're ready to talk to me. Could be 5 minutes, could be 5 hours. I got nowhere else I need to be." It took 3 hours, but Tommy finally opened that door. His eyes were red from crying, his face all blotchy. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I ruined everything." Diane pulled him into a hug. "You didn't ruin anything. You had a hard moment. We all have those. The game's not till tonight." "We got plenty of time." They made it to that game. Tommy was quiet during it. Not as excited as he'd been before, but he held Diane's hand in the crowd. That was progress. School was another battle. Tommy was smart. Diane could see that. But he'd missed so much schooling bouncing around foster homes that he'd fallen way behind. He was in 5th grade, but reading at a 2nd grade level. Math wasn't much better. Diane started bringing homework materials on her visits. They'd sit at the group home's kitchen table, and she'd help him sound out words, work through math problems. It was slow going. Tommy would get frustrated, say he was too stupid to learn, that there was no point trying. "Don't you ever say that," Diane told him firmly. "You are not stupid. You just haven't had anyone take the time to teach you proper." "Well, I got time. We're gonna do this together," and they did. Bit by bit, week by week, Tommy started improving. By the time he turned 12, he was almost caught up to his grade level. His teacher, Mrs. Lopez, called Diane personally to tell her about his progress. "I don't know what you're doing with him," Mrs. Lopez said, "but keep doing it. He's like a different child than he was a year ago." What Diane was doing was showing up. That's all. Just being there, being consistent, being someone Tommy could count on. It wasn't just academics either. Tommy had this thing he did when he got anxious or scared. He'd draw, fill up whole notebooks with sketches. Most were dark at first, scary images that showed what was going on inside his head. But over time, they got lighter. He started drawing people, places, things that made him happy. For his 12th birthday, Diane saved up for weeks to buy him a real artist set. Not the cheap stuff from the dollar store, but good quality colored pencils, sketch pads, even a beginner's set of paints. The look on his face when he opened that gift was something she'd never forget. "This is too much," Tommy said, his eyes wide. "Miss D, this must have cost a lot of money." "You're worth it," Diane said simply. "I see how talented you are. Everybody should have a chance to develop their talents." Tommy used those art supplies until they were worn down to nothing. He drew Diane, her daughters, Mrs. Chen, the other kids at the group home. He drew the tree in the backyard, the birds that came to visit, the sky at different times of day. Art became his way of processing feelings he couldn't put into words. Maya and Keisha were in college by now, both on scholarships, thank goodness, but they still made time for Tommy when they came home. They'd take him to the movies, to the park, treat him like the little brother he'd become to them. "Your daughters are so nice," Tommy told Diane once. "You raised them right. I'm raising you right too, Diane said. You're part of this family, Tommy. Maybe not on paper, but in every way that matters. But being part of the family didn't mean things were always smooth. When Tommy turned 13, the teenage years hit him hard. He started getting into fights at school. Nothing serious, but enough to get him suspended twice. He'd come back from school with bruised knuckles, a defiant look in his eyes. Diane got called to the group home for a meeting with his counselor and Mrs. Chen. They were worried, talking about anger management classes, maybe medication. Can I talk to him alone first? Diane asked. She took Tommy for a walk. They ended up at a park, sitting on swings like he was a little kid again instead of a teenager trying to act tough. You want to tell me what's going on? Diane asked. And don't tell me nothing because I know you better than that. Tommy was quiet for a long time, dragging his feet in the dirt. There's this kid at school, Kevin. He found out I'm in foster care. Keeps saying things, calling me names. Says my real parents didn't want me, that's why I got dumped. Diane felt that old familiar anger rise up. So you hit him? He wouldn't shut up, Tommy said, his voice breaking. He kept saying it in front of everybody and they were laughing and I couldn't take it anymore. Look at me, baby. Diane waited until he turned to face her. What that boy said is wrong. Your parents had problems. Adult problems that had nothing to do with you. You didn't get dumped. You got dealt a bad hand, that's all. But you know what? Some of the strongest people I know are the ones who had to fight for everything they got. I'm tired of fighting, Tommy said quietly. I know you are, Diane said. But fighting doesn't always mean using your fists. Sometimes fighting means proving people wrong by being better than they expect. You're smart, you're talented, you're kind when you let yourself be. Don't let some ignorant kid take that away from you. Tommy nodded, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. You really think I'm all those things? I know you are, Diane said. I've seen you grow from that scared little boy under the stairs to the young man sitting next to me right now. You've come so far, Tommy. Don't throw it away because of somebody else's ugly words. The fights at school stopped after that. Not immediately, but gradually. Tommy started handling things differently. He'd tell Mrs. Lopez when kids bothered him. He'd walk away instead of swinging. He started focusing more on his art, joining the school art club. When Tommy turned 16, reality hit them both. He was aging out of the system soon. In 2 years, he'd be 18 and the group home wouldn't be an option anymore. The counselors started preparing him for independent living, teaching him how to budget money, cook basic meals, fill out job applications. Diane watched this happening and felt panic rising in her chest. She'd been there for 8 years now, every week without fail. But what happened when the system let him go? Where would he live? How would he survive? She started making plans. She couldn't give him much, but she could give him something. She helped him get his first job at a grocery store stocking shelves. She taught him how to save money, open a bank account. She co-signed for him to get his first apartment when he turned 18, even though it scared her financially. Why do you do all this for me? Tommy asked her one day. He was 17 now, almost a man, but his voice still held that little kid uncertainty sometimes. Diane thought about how to answer. She could say a lot of things. That she saw something special in him, that God put him in her path for a reason, that she couldn't have lived with herself if she'd walked past him that rainy night. But what she said was simpler and more true. Because you're my boy. That's what you do for your kids. You show up, you help them grow, you give them roots and wings. And that's what you are to me, Tommy. You're mine, even if the paperwork doesn't say so. Tommy's eyes filled with tears. You're the only mother I've ever really had, Miss D. And you're the son I didn't know I needed, Diane said, pulling him into a hug. 8 years of weekly visits. 8 years of homework help and art supplies and showing up even when it was hard. 8 years of building something that looked like family even when the system said they couldn't be one. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, setbacks, moments of doubt. But through it all, Diane kept her promise. She didn't give up on Tommy Jenkins. And slowly but surely, Tommy stopped expecting her to. Tommy graduated high school on a warm June evening, and Diane was there in the audience cheering louder than anyone else. She'd taken the day off work, brought flowers, even made a congratulatory banner that Maya and Keisha helped her hold up. When Tommy walked across that stage to get his diploma, Diane cried happy tears. She knew how hard he'd worked for this moment. After the ceremony, Tommy found her in the crowd. He was wearing the suit she'd helped him pick out. Looking so grown up it made her heart ache a little. "I did it, Miss D," he said, grinning wide. "I actually did it." "I never doubted you for a second," Diane said, hugging him tight. "I'm so proud of you, baby." They went out for dinner that night. Diane and her daughters and Tommy celebrating at a restaurant that was fancier than what Diane could really afford. But some moments were worth the cost. Tommy talked about his plans, his dreams. He wanted to go to art school eventually, but first he needed to save money. He'd gotten a full-time position at the grocery store, moving up from stocking shelves to the customer service desk. "I'm going to make something of myself," Tommy said with determination. "I'm going to make you proud." "You already have," Diane told him. Every single day. A month later, Tommy moved to Chicago. There were more job opportunities there, he said. Better pay. Maybe he could take some classes at the community college. Diane helped him pack his few belongings into his old car, fighting back tears the whole time. "It's only a few hours away," Tommy said, seeing her face. "I'll call you all the time. And I'll visit." "You better," Diane said, trying to smile. "And you call me if you need anything." "Anything at all, you hear me?" "I will, Miss D, I promise." The first few months, Tommy kept his promise. He called every week, telling Diane about his new apartment, his job at a warehouse, the city. He sounded excited, hopeful. Diane felt proud but also worried. Chicago was big and Tommy was still just 18, still figuring out who he was. Then the calls started coming less frequently. Once every 2 weeks, then once a month. Tommy always had reasons. He was working overtime, he was tired, his phone bill was late, so his service got cut off. Diane tried not to worry, but mother's intuition is a real thing. Something felt off. What she didn't know was that Tommy was struggling. Really struggling. The warehouse job didn't pay as much as he'd hoped. His apartment was in a rough neighborhood because it was all he could afford. He was lonely in a way he hadn't expected, surrounded by millions of people but not knowing a single one. The old demon started creeping back in. Depression, anxiety, feeling like he didn't belong anywhere. He started hanging around with some guys from work who seemed friendly at first. They invited him places, made him feel included. But they were into things Tommy knew he shouldn't be doing. Small stuff at first, then bigger stuff. He knew better. Diane had raised him better. But when you're lonely and lost, sometimes bad company feels better than no company at all. 2 years went by like this. Tommy stopped calling almost completely. Maybe 4 times a year, and even then, the conversations were short, surface level. He'd tell Diane everything was fine, he was just busy. But his voice sounded different. Hollow somehow. Diane would lie awake at night wondering if she'd failed him. If she should have done more, tried harder to keep him close. Maya and Keisha told her she'd done everything she could, that Tommy was an adult making his own choices now. But that didn't make it hurt any less. Then came the call she'd been dreading. Tommy had been arrested. Petty theft, the public defender told her. He'd been caught stealing from a convenience store. Nothing violent, but enough to get him 6 months in county jail. Diane felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. Her boy, her Tommy, in jail. She couldn't afford a lawyer, couldn't afford to fly to Chicago. All she could do was what she'd always done. Show up in the way she could. She wrote him letters. Every single week, just like she'd visited him every week when he was in the group home. Long letters telling him about her life, about his sisters, about the neighborhood. Reminding him that he was loved, that this didn't define him, that he could come back from this. At first, Tommy didn't write back. Diane kept writing anyway. Week after week, pouring her heart onto paper, sending it to a jail cell in Chicago. 3 months in, she finally got a response. Tommy's handwriting was shaky and the letter was short. "Miss D, I'm sorry. I messed everything up. You believed in me and I let you down. I don't deserve you." Diane cried when she read those words. Then she sat down and wrote back immediately. "Baby boy, you didn't let me down. You stumbled. We all stumble sometimes. What matters is getting back up. I love you just as much today as I did when you were 8 years old under those stairs. That hasn't changed and it never will. You hear me? Nothing you do could make me stop loving you." The letters continued. Slowly, Tommy started opening up. He told her about the loneliness, the bad choices, how he'd felt so lost without her steady presence in his life. He told her things he'd never said before, about still having nightmares about his childhood, about feeling like he was damaged goods, about not knowing how to be a normal person. Diane wrote back with wisdom, with love, with the same patience she'd always shown him. She told him about therapy, about how healing wasn't linear, about how strength wasn't about never falling down but about getting back up every time you did. When Tommy got out of jail, he was 22 years old. He'd lost his apartment, his job, pretty much everything. He thought about calling Diane but couldn't bring himself to do it. How could he face her after everything, after throwing away all the chances she'd given him? Instead, he lived in a shelter for a few weeks. Got a job washing dishes at a diner. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. He started attending a support group for former inmates trying to rebuild their lives. That's where he met Lisa. She was a social worker who volunteered with the group. She didn't judge him for his past, didn't look at him like he was broken. She saw potential in him, the same way Diane always had. They became friends first, then something more. Lisa was the one who finally convinced him to call Diane. "You keep talking about this woman who saved your life," Lisa said one night, "who never gave up on you even when you were in jail. Why haven't you called her?" "Because I'm ashamed," Tommy admitted. "Because I disappointed her." "From everything you've told me about her, I don't think that's how she sees it," Lisa said gently. "I think she's probably worried sick about you. Maybe it's time to let her know you're okay." Tommy thought about that for days. Finally, he picked up the phone. His hands were shaking as he dialed the number he still knew by heart. Diane answered on the second ring. "Hello? Miss D?" Tommy's voice cracked. "It's me. It's Tommy." There was a pause, and then Diane's voice came through thick with emotion. "Tommy, oh baby, where are you? Are you okay?" They talked for 2 hours that night. Tommy told her everything. The jail time, the shelter, the new start he was trying to make. Diane listened without judgment, without I told you so's, with nothing but love and relief that he was safe. "I'm proud of you," she said when he finished. "You hit bottom and you're climbing back up. That takes courage." "I want to do better," Tommy said. "I want to be the person you always believed I could be." "Then do it," Diane said simply. "One day at a time. And Tommy, you don't have to do it alone. I'm still here. I've always been here." That conversation changed something in Tommy. He started attending community college classes, taking courses in business and graphic design. He kept working, kept staying clean, kept moving forward. It was hard. Some days he wanted to give up. But he'd think about Diane, about everything she'd sacrificed for him, and he'd push through. He didn't call her every week yet. The shame was still there, the feeling that he didn't deserve her love. But he called more than he had. Once a month became twice a month. He'd tell her about his classes, his progress, his girlfriend Lisa, who was helping him heal. Meanwhile, Diane's own life was changing. She turned 60 and had to retire from nursing. Her body couldn't handle the long shifts anymore. Her diabetes was getting worse, her blood pressure too high. She moved to Atlanta to be closer to Maya, who'd gotten married and had kids of her own. The move was hard. Detroit had been home her whole life. But her health demanded it, and being near her grandbabies brought her joy. Still, she thought about Tommy constantly, wondered how he was doing, prayed for him every night. 3 years passed. Tommy was 25 now, working hard, staying focused. He'd finished community college and transferred to a university. He'd started a small graphic design business on the side. Nothing big yet, but it was growing. He and Lisa got married in a small courthouse ceremony. But through all of it, he carried guilt. Guilt about the years he'd wasted. Guilt about pulling away from Diane when she'd never pulled away from him. Guilt about not being there when she got sick, when she had to move away from her home. He wanted to reach out, wanted to thank her properly, wanted her to know that everything good in his life traced back to her. But shame kept holding him back. What if she didn't want to hear from him? What if too much time had passed? It was Lisa who finally gave him the push he needed. "You're not that scared kid anymore," she told him. "You're not even the guy who made mistakes a few years ago. You've grown. You've changed. Don't you think she deserves to see that? Don't you think you owe it to her to show her that her faith in you wasn't misplaced?" Tommy knew his wife was right. It was time to stop running from his past and start honoring it. It was time to find Miss D and thank her properly for saving his life. It was time to go home. Finding Diane wasn't as hard as Tommy thought it would be. Maya, Diane's oldest daughter, was on social media. Tommy sent her a message, his heart pounding as he typed. He half expected her to ignore him, to tell him he'd hurt their mother enough. Instead, she responded within an hour. "Tommy, oh my God, we've been wondering about you for years. Mom talks about you all the time. She's in Atlanta now. When are you coming to visit? Tommy stared at that message for a long time. She talks about him all the time. Even after everything. Even after he'd disappeared for years, messed up his life, barely stayed in touch. She still talked about him. He wiped his eyes and typed back. Soon, real soon. It took him 2 weeks to get everything ready. He needed to do this right. He talked to his business partner about taking some time off. He and Lisa planned the trip together. And Tommy made some other arrangements. Things he'd been working toward for months now. Things that felt impossible, but somehow he'd managed. The flight to Atlanta felt like the longest few hours of his life. Lisa held his hand during takeoff. She could feel how nervous he was. What if she's mad at me? Tommy said quietly. What if too much time has passed? From everything you've told me about her, Lisa said, squeezing his hand, I don't think that woman knows how to stop loving you. They rented a car at the airport. Maya had given him Diane's address. She lived in a small apartment in a senior community, Maya had explained. Nothing fancy, but it was safe and close to her and the grandkids. Tommy drove slowly through the neighborhood, his stomach in knots. He'd rehearsed what he wanted to say 100 times, but now all those words felt stuck in his throat. You want me to come with you? Lisa asked when they pulled up to the building. No, Tommy said. I need to do this part alone. But thank you. He sat in the car for 5 minutes, just breathing, gathering courage. Then he remembered something Diane used to tell him when he was scared. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what you need to do even when you are afraid. Tommy got out of the car and walked to apartment 3B. His hand shook as he raised it to knock. 3 soft knocks. Then he waited. He heard movement inside. Footsteps. Slow, careful footsteps. Then the door opened. Diane stood there and Tommy's breath caught. She looked older, smaller somehow than he remembered. Her hair had gone mostly gray. She was wearing reading glasses pushed up on her head. She was holding a book like he'd interrupted her reading. For a second, she just stared at him with a confused expression. Then recognition hit her like a wave. Tommy? Her voice was barely a whisper. The book fell from her hands. Tommy, is that really you? Hi, Miss D, Tommy managed to say, and then his voice broke completely. It's me. Diane made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. She moved faster than someone her age should be able to move, pulling him into her arms, holding him tight like she was afraid he might disappear if she let go. My boy, she kept saying over and over. My boy, you came back. They stood there in the doorway crying, holding each other. Neither of them could speak for several minutes. Finally, Diane pulled back, her hands on Tommy's face, looking at him like she was making sure he was real. Look at you, she said, tears streaming down her face. You're all grown up. You look so good, baby. So healthy. Can I come in? Tommy asked. I have so much to tell you. Diane's apartment was small but cozy. Pictures of her daughters and grandchildren covered the walls. Tommy noticed his own face in several of them, too. That old sketch he'd drawn of her when he was 8, framed and hanging in a place of honor. Photos from his high school graduation. A card he'd sent her one Christmas years ago. She'd kept everything. Even when he'd pulled away, even when he'd stopped calling, she'd kept him present in her life. They sat on her couch and Tommy couldn't stop apologizing. For disappearing, for the mistakes he'd made, for not being there when she got sick and had to move. All the guilt he'd been carrying for years came pouring out. Diane listened patiently like she always had. When he finally ran out of words, she took his hands in hers. Tommy, look at me, she said firmly. You listen to me good now. I don't need your apologies. I never did. You were a young man trying to find his way. You stumbled, you fell, but baby, you got back up. That's what matters. But I hurt you, Tommy said. I know I did. Yes, you did, Diane admitted. I worried about you every single day. Cried myself to sleep some nights wondering if you were okay. But I never stopped loving you. I never stopped believing in you. Not for 1 second. Why? Tommy asked, the question that had haunted him for years. After everything, why didn't you give up on me? Diane smiled, touching his face gently. Because that's not what mothers do. And that's what I am, Tommy. I might not have given birth to you, might not have your name on any legal papers, but I'm your mother in every way that counts. You've been my son since that rainy night 20 years ago. 20 years. Had it really been that long? Tommy thought about that scared 8-year-old boy hiding under the stairs. He thought about the journey from there to here, all the ups and downs, the failures and small victories. And through it all, this woman had been there, loving him, believing in him, even when he couldn't believe in himself. "I want to show you something," Tommy said, pulling out his phone. He showed her pictures of his life. His business, which was doing better than he'd ever dreamed. Awards he'd won for his design work. Photos of him and Lisa at their small wedding. "This is my wife, Lisa. She's a social worker. She helps kids like I was. I told her all about you. She says you're the reason she fell in love with me, because you taught me what real love looks like." Diane looked through every picture, tears flowing freely, her smile growing wider. "Tommy, this is wonderful. I'm so proud of you. So incredibly proud." "There's more," Tommy said. "Lisa's pregnant. We found out last month." "It's a girl," Diane gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "A baby? You're going to be a father?" "Yeah," Tommy said, grinning now. "And we want to name her Diana after you, and we want you to be Grandma D if that's okay. Be part of her life the way you were part of mine." Diane completely broke down then, sobbing happy tears. Tommy held her while she cried. This strong woman who'd saved him, who'd never given up on him, who'd shown him what unconditional love looked like. When she finally composed herself, Tommy said, "There's one more thing. The real reason I came." He pulled out an envelope from his jacket pocket. Inside were keys and legal documents. Diane looked at them, confused. "I bought you a house," Tommy said quietly. "A small one. Nothing crazy fancy, but it's got a yard and it's in a good neighborhood about 10 minutes from Maya. It's paid off completely. No mortgage, no rent, nothing. It's yours." Diane stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. "Tommy, no. I can't accept this. This is too much. Miss D, please," Tommy said. "Let me finish. I also set up an account for your medical bills and expenses. There's enough there to cover your medications, doctor visits, whatever you need. And there's a monthly payment coming to you, like a pension, so you don't have to worry about money anymore." "Tommy, I don't need," Diane started, but he interrupted her gently. "I know you don't need it. You never needed anything from me except for me to be okay. But I need this. I need you to understand what you did for me. You saved my life, Miss D. Not just that night when you found me, but every week after that. Every visit, every letter, every moment you showed up when nobody else would. You gave me a foundation to build my life on. You taught me that I was worth loving. Without you, I'd be dead or in prison or just lost somewhere." He took her hands again, looking her straight in the eye. "This isn't charity. This isn't me trying to pay off a debt. This is me honoring my mother. This is me making sure the woman who sacrificed everything for me can live comfortably. Please, please let me do this for you." Diane looked at this man who used to be a scared little boy. She saw the strength in him, the determination, the love. She understood that accepting his gift wasn't just about her. It was about letting him complete a circle, letting him show his gratitude in a way that gave him peace. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, baby. Thank you." They spent the rest of that day talking, catching up on years of life, filling in all the gaps. Lisa joined them for dinner, and Diane loved her immediately. Maya came over with her kids, and it felt like a family reunion. The grandchildren climbed all over Tommy, asking him a million,